The quantum lab hummed with the familiar drone of cooling systems and computing stacks. Dr. Sarah Chen stood before the holographic display, her dark eyes narrowed at the anomaly that shouldn't exist. The quantum entanglement patterns floated before her, a beautiful dance of interconnected particles that defied the laws of physics, or at least the laws as humanity understood them. "Run it again, AI." She commanded the lab's AI system. Her team had gone home hours ago, but Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the verge of something monumental. The quantum behavior they'd observed didn't make sense. It was as if something was actively interfering with their experiments, inserting itself into the very fabric of reality. The holographic display flickered, and the patterns reassembled themselves. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. There it was again, a perfect lattice of quantum states that couldn't have formed naturally. The implications made her hands tremble as she reached for her tablet. "Dr. Chen." Araya's voice carried a note of concern. "I've detected an unusual pattern in the background quantum noise. It appears to be responding to our observations." Sarah's fingers froze above the tablet's surface. "Responding? Show me." New data streams appeared in the air around her. To most observers, they would have looked like random fluctuations in the quantum field. But Sarah had spent 15 years studying quantum mechanics, and she knew better. These weren't random fluctuations. They were signatures of conscious manipulation. Araya. Compare these patterns to all known quantum computing algorithms in the database. "No matches found in human quantum computing research," Araya replied. "However, I detect a structured complexity that suggests technological origin. The mathematical precision exceeds our current capabilities by an estimated factor of 10^6. Sarah sank into her chair, her mind racing. She'd started this project hoping to improve quantum computing efficiency. Instead, she'd found evidence that something, was already manipulating quantum states on a massive scale. The real question was, why hadn't anyone noticed before? The answer hit her like a physical blow. Maybe they had noticed. Maybe every researcher who'd gotten this far had their work mysteriously disrupted or their funding suddenly cut. Maybe they'd been subtly guided away from these discoveries by the very forces they were trying to observe. ARIA. Initiate Privacy Protocol Lambda. Lock down all data from today's experiments. Authorization, Chen Delta 9. Privacy Protocol engage. ARIA confirmed. However, Dr. Chen, I should inform you that I detect unusual electronic activity in the building systems. Someone or something is attempting to access our network." Sarah's heart raced. "Disconnect us from the main grid. Now." The lab's lights flickered as ARIA severed their connection to the outside world. In the sudden silence, Sarah could hear her own breathing, too fast and too shallow. She forced herself to take slow, deliberate breaths as she considered her options. The quantum patterns still danced in the air before her, beautiful and impossible. They weren't just evidence of advanced technology. They were proof of a massive technological suppression system. Someone had created a quantum-level filter that subtly altered humanity's experiments, keeping them from advancing too quickly in certain technological directions. The question was, what would they do now that she'd noticed? Sarah's phone buzzed in her pocket, making her jump. The caller ID showed Dr. James Martinez, her colleague from MIT. James specialized in theoretical physics and had always been supportive of her more unconventional research directions. "James," she answered, trying to keep her voice steady. "You're up late." "Sarah," his voice was tight with tension. "Tell me you're seeing this too. The quantum interference patterns. They're not random, are they?" She closed her eyes, relief flooding through her. She wasn't alone in this discovery. "No, they're not. How long have you been tracking them?" 3 weeks. I thought I was losing my mind until tonight. Something changed in the last hour. The patterns became more obvious, almost like." He paused. "Like they're responding to being observed," Sarah finished. "James, I think we need to meet. In person. And we need to be very careful about who knows what we found. Agreed. Sarah, do you realize what this means? Everything we know about quantum mechanics, it's all been filtered through their lens. We've been seeing exactly what they wanted us to see. A chill ran down Sarah's spine as she looked at the quantum dance still playing out in her lab. The question is, James, now that we can see them, can they see us? As if in response, the quantum patterns shifted, forming a brief but unmistakable geometric sequence, a perfect hexagonal lattice that hung in the air for just a moment before dissolving back into apparent chaos. "Meet me at the old observatory," Sarah said quickly. "Midnight. Don't bring any electronic devices. Don't tell anyone where you're going." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "And James, take the long way there. Make sure you're not followed." She ended the call and turned to the holographic display. "ARIA, begin systematic documentation of all anomalous patterns. Store everything locally. No cloud backups." And she took a deep breath. "Start working on a way to replicate these interference patterns. If someone's been keeping humanity in the dark, it's time we learn to fight back." The quantum patterns swirled in the air around her, no longer just data points, but a message written in the language of reality itself. Humanity had been living in a carefully constructed box, their scientific progress subtly guided and contained. But they'd just found the edges of that box, and if there was one thing humans excelled at, it was breaking through barriers. Sarah gathered her notes and prepared to leave the lab. Tonight, she and James would begin planning humanity's response to this revelation. Their observers had been careful and patient, maintaining their technological suppression for who knew how long. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated humanity's ability to see patterns in chaos, to question the fundamental nature of reality itself. The game was about to change, and humanity would no longer be unwitting players. The old observatory stood silhouetted against the starlit sky, its dome a dark sentinel against the lighter darkness of space. Sarah pulled her car into the gravel lot, headlights off, and waited. The gentle tap of raindrops on the roof matched her heartbeat, steady, but too fast. James's figure emerged from the shadows, his usual professional demeanor replaced by careful, measured movements. He slipped into her car without a word, bringing with him the smell of wet wool and anxiety. "I found something in the historical data," he said without preamble, pulling a paper notebook from his coat. "No digital devices, as agreed. The interference patterns, they've been there all along, in every major quantum physics experiment for the past 70 years. Sarah took the notebook, scanning his meticulous hand-drawn graphs by the dim light of the moon. "They've been watching us since the Manhattan Project. Earlier, I think, but that's when they started actively intervening. Look at the pattern variations during key technological breakthroughs." His finger traced a series of spikes in the data. "Every time we get close to a genuine quantum computing breakthrough, the interference intensifies." A distant rumble of thunder punctuated his words. Sarah studied the patterns, her mind racing. "They're not just watching us, James. They're hurting us, nudging our research away from certain paths, steering us toward others." "Exactly. But here's the thing." He leaned closer, his voice dropping even though they were alone. "Their system isn't perfect. There are gaps, moments when their control slips. And I think I know why." Sarah looked up sharply. "Why?" "Because they designed their suppression field based on their understanding of quantum mechanics. But humans, we're doing it wrong." He gave a quiet laugh. "All these years, we've been approaching quantum computing from what they must consider a completely backward direction. Our primitive methods are so inefficient that their system sometimes fails to recognize what we're doing." Sarah's eyes widened as the implications hit her. "Our weakness is our strength. They're so advanced that they never considered we might stumble onto something useful through sheer human stubbornness." "Precisely. Look at this." James flipped to another page, revealing a complex series of equations. "I've mapped out the moments when their interference is weakest. There's a pattern to it. When our quantum experiments are at their most theoretically incorrect, that's when we see through their veil. In the distance, lightning illuminated the observatory's dome. Sarah counted the seconds until the thunder arrived, using the delay to organize her thoughts. We need to replicate these conditions, create a space where their suppression field is blind to our work. It's risky, James warned. The moment they realize what we're doing, they'll know we know, Sarah finished. But what choice do we have? Humanity's been in a quantum playpen for nearly a century. It's time we broke out. The rain intensified, drumming on the car roof like impatient fingers. Sarah opened her own notebook, began sketching out ideas. We'll need help. Other researchers who might have noticed something odd in their own work. But we have to be incredibly careful about who we trust. I have a few names, James offered. People who've published papers that hint at awareness of the anomalies, even if they didn't realize what they were seeing. Dr. Yuki Tanaka in Tokyo, Dr. Elena Rossi in Rome. Dr. Marcus Webb, Sarah added. His work on quantum tunneling last year. Everyone said it was flawed because it showed impossible efficiency rates. But what if he accidentally slipped through their net? They spent the next hour building their list, cross-referencing researchers whose work had been dismissed by the mainstream scientific community for being theoretically unsound. A pattern emerged. Brilliant minds who'd glimpsed something extraordinary, but had been steered away from their discoveries by peer review, funding cuts, or equipment failures. We'll need a secure way to contact them, Sarah said, adding the last name to their list. No phones, no emails, nothing that could be monitored. James smiled for the first time that night. I think I know how. Remember that quantum entanglement messaging system you were working on last year? The one that failed because the results were too noisy to be useful. Of course. Sarah stopped, staring at him. The noise. It wasn't noise at all, was it? It was their interference. But if we calibrated to work with the interference instead of fighting it, we could hide our communications in what looks like quantum static. They'd see it as just another failed experiment. Sarah started the car, her mind already racing with possibilities. We'll need to modify the equipment, strip it down to the most basic components. The more primitive it looks, the less likely they are to recognize it as a threat. James finished. Sarah, this is incredibly dangerous. If they realize what we're doing, then we'll have proven that humanity is ready to join the galactic community, whether they want us to or not. She pulled out of the parking lot, the observatory's dome disappearing into the rainy darkness behind them. Besides, isn't this what humans do best? Find unconventional solutions, turn our limitations into advantages. As they drove back toward the city, Sarah couldn't help but smile. Somewhere up there, advanced beings were watching humanity through their quantum filters, confident in their technological superiority. They had no idea that their carefully maintained system was about to be undermined by the very primitiveness they sought to control. The quantum resistance was about to begin, and it would start not with a bang, but with a whisper in the static they'd been trained to ignore. Dr. Yuki Tanaka's message arrived in a burst of quantum static at 3:47 a.m. They're watching Tokyo. Equipment malfunctions increasing, but breakthrough confirmed. Primitive quantum tunneling works. Sarah stared at the decoded message on the handwritten paper, her heart racing. 3 months of careful preparation had led to this moment. Around her, the basement lab hummed with jury-rigged equipment that would have made any serious quantum physicist cringe. Exposed wires, circuit boards from old gaming consoles, and crystalline structures grown in high school chemistry labs. It looked more like a teenager's science project than cutting-edge research. That was exactly the point. ARA, status report, Sarah whispered, though they'd long since determined that conventional audio surveillance wasn't the aliens' primary method of monitoring. Quantum interference patterns holding steady at normal levels, the AI reported. They appear to be interpreting our activities as failed experiments as intended. James emerged from the makeshift Faraday cage they'd constructed in the corner, holding a tablet deliberately downgraded to use 20th century processing technology. Bellina's team in Rome reports the same thing. The more primitive we make our equipment, the less attention we draw. Sarah nodded, allowing herself a small smile. It's like we're technological wildlife to them. They're so focused on watching for advanced quantum experiments that they completely overlook anything that looks sufficiently primitive. Hiding in plain sight, James agreed. But Sarah, we need to talk about Marcus's latest data. He spread out several papers on their work table, each covered in hand-drawn graphs and hastily scribbled equations. Dr. Marcus Webb's work in quantum tunneling had been key to their breakthrough, showing them how to slip through the gaps in the alien's suppression field. The interference patterns are changing, James continued, becoming more erratic. I think they're starting to notice that something's wrong, even if they can't pinpoint what. Sarah studied the graphs, her excitement fading into concern. The alien's quantum suppression field had indeed begun showing signs of instability. Like an immune system detecting an infection, it was starting to react to humanity's subtle rebellion. How long do you think we have? A week. Maybe less. James ran a hand through his disheveled hair. We need to move faster. If we're going to break through their suppression field, we need to do it before they modify their system to account for our unorthodox approach. Sarah crossed to the main quantum interface, a bizarre combination of modern sensors and deliberately outdated technology. They'd found that mixing technological eras created a kind of quantum camouflage, making their experiments harder for the aliens to track. HFY. Initialize Protocol Omega. Send the signal to all participating labs. Protocol Omega initiated. HFY confirmed. Warning. This will likely attract attention from our observers. That's counting on it, Sarah replied. Everyone's in position. Time to show them what humanity's primitive science can do. Across the globe, in hidden labs and basement facilities, teams of scientists began powering up their mismatched equipment. In Tokyo, Dr. Tanaka's team activated quantum tunneling devices built from modified microwave parts. In Rome, Dr. Rossi's group initiated their sequence using crystalline structures grown in ordinary lab conditions, and in dozens of other locations, researchers prepared to challenge the boundaries of their quantum cage. The plan was elegantly simple, in a way that only humans could devise. Instead of trying to overcome the alien suppression field with brute force, they would use its own complexity against it. Each team would generate quantum signals that appeared to be random noise, the kind of failed experiments the aliens had seen thousands of times before. But together, these signals would create a resonance pattern. Like a child pushing a swing at just the right moment, they would amplify the natural fluctuations in the suppression field until it began to break down. First wave of signals confirmed, HFY reported. Quantum interference patterns showing initial signs of destabilization. Sarah watched the holographic display as data poured in from around the world. The alien suppression field rippled like the surface of a pond in a rainstorm, each seemingly random quantum event contributing to its growing instability. They're responding, James called out, monitoring the changes in the field. The suppression patterns are trying to adapt, but they can't seem to get a fix on what we're doing. Our signals are too messy. Sarah allowed herself a grim smile. Messy is what humans do best. We've spent our entire scientific history stumbling around in the dark, finding solutions through trial and error. They never expected us to weaponize our own inefficiency. Warning lights suddenly flashed across their monitoring systems. The quantum interference patterns were changing rapidly, showing signs of organized response. Their observers had finally realized something was wrong. Multiple new quantum signatures detected, HFY announced. Consistent with directed energy patterns, they appear to be actively scanning for the source of the disruption. Keep going, Sarah ordered, sending quick messages to the other teams. They're looking for advanced quantum technology. They won't find any, because we're not using any. The basement lab hummed with increasing energy as their cobbled-together equipment pushed harder against the boundaries of known physics. Warning signals blared from multiple stations, but Sarah kept her eyes fixed on the main display. The suppression field was beginning to show signs of critical instability. "Sarah," James called out, his voice tight with tension. "I'm detecting massive energy signatures in orbit. I think we got their attention." "Good," Sarah replied, her fingers flying over the controls. "Because we're about to show them exactly what humanity's capable of. HFY, initiate final sequence. Let's tear open their quantum cage." The room filled with the sound of overworking equipment and the crackle of energy as humanity prepared to break free from its technological constraints. Above them, advanced beings who had watched and controlled human development for decades were about to learn a crucial lesson. Sometimes, the most powerful innovations come not from perfect technology, but from the messy, determined, incredibly human drive to break through any barrier placed in their path. The first sign of direct alien response came not as an attack, but as a signal, a perfectly structured quantum sequence that appeared simultaneously in every lab participating in Protocol Omega. Sarah watched as HFY translated the pattern into readable text, her heart pounding against her ribs. "CEC activities immediately, Eloy. Preparing for intake." "They're not trying to stop us," James said, his voice filled with disbelief. "They're coming to talk." Sarah straightened her back, eyes fixed on the quantum activity monitors. "Everyone hold position." She transmitted to the global network of labs. "Continue running interference patterns, but don't escalate. Let's see what they have to say." The air in the basement lab seemed to thicken, reality itself bending as advanced quantum technology far beyond human understanding carved out a space for communication. A sphere of softly shimmering energy formed in the center of the room, and within it, shapes began to coalesce. 3 figures materialized, or rather, their representations did. They appeared humanoid but with subtle differences. Too tall, too symmetrical, their movements too precise. Their skin had a faint metallic sheen, and their eyes held an inner light that spoke of technological enhancement far beyond anything humanity had achieved. "I am Overseer Zix," the central figure announced, its voice resonating directly in their minds. "We have monitored your species for 347 of your years. Your recent activities require immediate discussion." Sarah stepped forward, acutely aware of how primitive she must appear to these beings. "I'm Dr. Sarah Chen. We've been expecting you, though I admit we're surprised by this form of contact." The alien's expression shifted in a way that might have been amusement. "Your method of breaching our suppression field was unexpected. We had not considered the possibility of technological advancement through deliberate regression." "Humanity has a talent for finding unconventional solutions," Sarah replied. "Though we'd like to understand why you felt the need to suppress our development in the first place." The 3 aliens exchanged looks, communicating in ways human senses couldn't perceive. Finally, Overseer Zix spoke again. "Your species develops technology before developing wisdom. Your history is marked by the creation of weapons before safeguards, of power before understanding. We sought to guide your progress along safer paths. By keeping us in a quantum cage." James stepped forward, anger evident in his voice. "By deciding for us what we were ready to know." "Your protest is noted." Another of the aliens spoke, its tone carrying something like concern. "But consider, in the time we have guided your development, you have not destroyed yourselves with nuclear weapons. You have not collapsed your civilization with uncontrolled artificial intelligence. You have not torn apart your planet's quantum fabric with unconstrained experiments." "Because we haven't had the chance," Sarah countered. "You never gave us the opportunity to prove we could handle these advancements responsibly. Yet your response to discovering our presence was to immediately develop a way to disrupt our systems," the 3rd alien observed. "Does this not prove our concerns valid?" Sarah smiled. "I don't think so. Look at how we did it. We didn't use advanced technology. We didn't try to match your capabilities. Instead, we found a solution that worked within our limitations. We turned our weakness into strength. Isn't that exactly the kind of wisdom you were waiting for us to develop?" The aliens conferred again, their forms shimmering with quantum energy. Around them, the lab's primitive equipment continued to generate its chaotic patterns, maintaining the disruption in their suppression field. "Your argument has merit," Overseer Zix finally acknowledged. "But the situation remains complicated. Your species has now proven capable of detecting and counteracting our technology, albeit in an unexpected way. This changes the parameters of our observation. Then change the nature of our relationship," Sarah proposed. "You've watched us stumble and experiment and find our way through scientific principles for centuries. Why not work with us openly? Guide us not through suppression, but through teaching." The Council has strict protocols regarding technological transfer to developing species, one of the other overseers began, but Zix raised a hand. "Perhaps," the overseer said, "it is time to reevaluate those protocols. Your species has demonstrated something we had not considered possible, the ability to advance through apparent regression, to find strength in primitive methods we had dismissed as obsolete. We call it thinking outside the box," Sarah said. "Though in this case, I suppose it was thinking inside a more primitive box than you expected." For the first time, the aliens' expressions showed something like genuine emotion, a mixture of amusement and respect. "Your species continues to surprise us. This may be why the suppression field began failing in recent years. You think in ways we had not predicted. Then work with us," Sarah pressed. "Let humanity join the galactic community on our own terms. We've proven we can find solutions you haven't considered. Imagine what we could accomplish together." The overseers conferred one final time, their quantum energies swirling in complex patterns. When they turned back to Sarah and James, their decision was evident in their posture. "We will need to establish new protocols," Overseer Zix announced. "A new framework for interaction between our civilizations. But first, you must demonstrate one more thing." "What's that?" Sarah asked. "The wisdom to power down your disruption field," Zix replied. "To show trust, despite having the capability to resist." Sarah looked at James, then at the monitors showing the global network of labs all maintaining their quantum interference. With a single command, she could keep the suppression field destabilized. With another, she could potentially collapse it entirely. The choice would show exactly what kind of species humanity really was. She reached for the controls, aware that this moment would define humanity's future among the stars. Sarah's hand hovered over the control panel, the weight of humanity's future pressing down on her shoulders. Around the world, dozens of labs waited for her signal, their jerry-rigged quantum devices maintaining the interference that kept them free from alien control. One command would keep humanity defensive, protected. Another would show trust. She pressed the button. Across the globe, the chaotic quantum signals began to fade. The disruption field that humanity had created through their uniquely primitive approach slowly dissolved, leaving them potentially vulnerable to the alien superior technology. "An interesting choice," Overseer Zix observed, the being's metallic features shifting in what might have been approval. "Though you maintain the capability to reactivate your interference if needed. Trust doesn't mean abandoning caution," Sarah replied. "We're ready to work together, but we'll maintain our ability to resist if necessary. That's not distrust, it's wisdom." The overseer's eyes gleamed with that strange inner light. "You continue to demonstrate unexpected insights. We had anticipated either complete submission or continued resistance. This balanced approach interests us." James stepped forward. "We've spent our entire history walking lines between extremes. Finding compromise isn't weakness, it's how humanity has survived and progressed." Indeed, the second overseer moved closer, studying their primitive equipment with what appeared to be fascination. "Your solution to our suppression field demonstrates this perfectly. When unable to match our advanced technology, you simply went in the opposite direction. Primitive equipment, deliberately inefficient methods, using chaos itself as a tool. We had not considered such an approach possible. Humans are good at working with what we have, Sarah said. We've had to be. Every step of our development has been a process of turning limitations into advantages, which is precisely why, Overseer Zix announced, we have decided to propose a new type of relationship between our civilizations. The air in the lab shifted, quantum energies swirling in complex patterns as the aliens prepared to make their formal proposal. Sarah felt James tense beside her, both of them acutely aware that this moment would define humanity's path forward. We offer neither complete technological access nor continued suppression, Zix continued. Instead, we propose a graduated integration program. Your species will gain access to advanced knowledge in stages, while maintaining your own unique approach to problem solving. You mean you want to study how we do things differently? Sarah surmised. The third overseer spoke for the first time in several minutes. Your methods are inefficient, chaotic, often seemingly illogical, yet you achieve results we had not thought possible. This suggests that our own development may have become too rigid. Quantum mechanics tells us that observation changes the thing being observed, James noted. Maybe while you were watching us, we were inadvertently teaching you. A profound observation, Zix agreed. Your species' greatest strength appears to be your ability to find new paths to old destinations. This gift could benefit the entire galactic community. Sarah considered the implications. So humanity becomes not just another advanced civilization, but one that maintains its unique perspective. We keep our primitive approach even as we gain access to advanced technology. Precisely. Your recent demonstration proved that sometimes the most elegant solution is the least elegant approach. This paradox intrigues us. Around them, the lab's equipment hummed quietly. The modified consumer electronics and jury-rigged sensors, a testament to human ingenuity. They had cracked open the aliens' quantum cage not with superior technology, but with deliberately inferior methods that exploited gaps in the advanced system's expectations. We accept, Sarah said firmly, on one condition. The overseers shifted, their forms shimming with quantum energy. State your condition. The knowledge exchange goes both ways. Yes, you'll teach us about advanced technology gradually, making sure we're ready for each step. But you also study our methods, our way of approaching problems. True collaboration means both sides have something to teach. The aliens conferred briefly, their quantum signals creating complex patterns in the air. Finally, Zix turned back to Sarah and James. Accepted. Your species will retain autonomy over its development, while gaining access to advanced knowledge at an appropriate pace. In return, you will help us understand how to think less perfectly. Sarah smiled. I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. A human cultural reference, one of the other overseers noted. We look forward to understanding why your species communicates so frequently through such indirect means. As the quantum energy field began to fade, preparing to transport the overseers back to their ship, Zix had one final observation. You should know, Dr. Chen, that in all our centuries of guiding developing civilizations, none has ever surprised us quite like humanity. Your species' greatest weakness, your primitive, chaotic approach to technology, proved to be your greatest strength. That's humanity in a nutshell, James replied. We specialize in turning weaknesses into strengths. The aliens departed, leaving Sarah and James alone in their basement lab full of modified consumer electronics and deliberately inefficient quantum sensors. Through the global communication network they'd cobbled together, reports began coming in from other facilities. The alien suppression field was completely gone, replaced by something new, quantum signals that invited rather than restricted. So, James said, looking at their primitive equipment, should we start dismantling all this now that we have access to advanced technology? Sarah ran her hand along the jury-rigged control panel, smiling. No, I don't think so. This stays exactly as it is. A reminder that sometimes the best way forward is to take a step back. Besides, she added with a grin, We might need it again someday. Always keeping our options open. That's how humanity got here, Sarah replied, looking up at where the aliens had been. And that's how we'll go forward, not just accepting advanced technology, but maintaining our unique perspective. Sometimes you need a quantum computer, and sometimes you need a quantum computer built from spare parts and duct tape. Outside, the sun was rising on humanity's first day as a recognized galactic civilization. They had earned their place not by matching the aliens' advancement, but by proving that their very primitiveness could be a source of innovation. In trying to suppress humanity's chaotic development, their watchers had instead helped create something entirely new, a species that could bridge the gap between primitive and advanced technology, finding unique solutions that neither approach could achieve alone. The price of tomorrow, it turned out, was not abandoning their past, but embracing it in entirely new ways.